Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to NRRL Super League. This is the Wednesday Super League, and this is, I believe, round 3 of the season. We take today to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. My name is JP, I'm your commentator. We will be joined by Lewis soon, who is having some technical difficulties. But it should be a good Grand Prix and a good qualifying session tonight around what is a very technical circuit. One of the, I would say, better tracks on the Formula 1 game. Very hard to hook a lap up, but when you can, incredibly satisfying. And, well, qualifying, always brilliant around here to see these modern day Formula 1 cars at their truest speed, flying around a brilliant high-speed technical circuit. I must admit, and I do just want to put a precursor on it, I probably won't sound like my normal self tonight. I'm a little bit under the weather. I've got a bit of an illness going on, so I might be a little more monotone than usual, but obviously bringing you the action all throughout nonetheless. Josh will be the first man to set a lap as he sets out in the Williams. Makes his way through the middle sector on his outlap. With Joki's also out on an outlap. Same with BP Ace, Sab Gaming, and Matt Connor, and they will make their way round to begin this qualifying session, and it should be a good session. Qualifying always very chaotic, shall we say, very hectic around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. It should be a good one nonetheless as Josh begins his first flying lap then. Into turn 1 he goes very quickly, turns into turn 2. Get a little bit over the curbs, and ride your way in, and set off towards turn 3. Pick your braking point. Very easy to turn in a bit early there and snag the wall. Get on full power as quickly as you can, and then this is really the death corner around here. Try to not to ride that outside wall. He has managed to do that and negotiate it well through the first sector. 32-7 split for him. And he now comes through the banked hairpin. Makes his way towards another very tricky braking zone. Doing well is the Williams so far though. He is making his way through very neatly. This will be a good banker lap for Josh thus far, I must say. 1 minute 1.7 middle sector split, and now it is really just full throttle. DRS opens all the way to the final corner, where you will, for the last time on this lap, pick your braking point, turn it in nicely, stand on the loud pedal and drive to the line. And what time will it be for Josh? He crosses the line now and it is a 29.0. BP Ace also currently on a lap. He is one of the quicker guys in this league. Matt Connor goes to the top of the timesheets with a 28.7. And BP Ace absolutely flying. A 1 minute flat middle sector split. He comes up to the final corner now in the Ferrari. Little snag of the wall on the exit, but nothing too major. And he makes his way to the line. A 27 flat, very quick lap there from BP Ace. I believe, Lewis, have you got in all right?
Yeah, I am now managed to get back my Discord. They tried to strike me down, so I'm here
Perfect.
now.
Well, the technical difficulties have been sorted, and Lewis is now with us, ladies and gentlemen. I was just explaining to the viewers, Lewis, I am a little bit ill today, so you might be taking the reins a bit more than I am, but I will do my best. We've currently got BP Ace provisional pole 27.0, 1.7 seconds clear of the next fastest car. And while only 5 drivers have set laps, that is lightning quick. And I've been saying, you know, Jeddah, it's a hard circuit, but if you can hook a lap up, it's very satisfying. And I'm sure that BP will be very satisfied with that lap.
Absolutely. It, like you say, it is one of those circuits where it is extremely difficult, very easy to crash. It's very frustrating. But when you can hit that perfect lap when everything is going exactly how you want it to, there's not many more satisfying feelings you can get, not only in real life, but especially on the game, given I believe it's much harder on the game, given how unresponsive these cars can be sometimes.
Exactly that. Sometimes these cars can be very hard to drive, and at a track like Jeddah, where you do need such a responsive car, it can weigh you down. Dan Lovett is currently on a lap. Not had the best of luck in recent weeks, has Dan, so he will be looking to improve his luck tonight in the McLaren. His teammate currently second with a 27.5 as Dan makes his way through the final sector now. But I'll pass it over to you, Lewis. Obviously, this is, I believe, round 3 or round 4 of the Super League. So we know sort of where most drivers are, 16 drivers tonight. Who are you keeping an eye on to take that fabled pole position at a track where pole position can be quite important?
Well, looking at the times right now, I'd expect that BPA would I'd be stunned if he didn't keep it. But in terms of those who you'd expect to be up there, your mind goes to who is up there at the minute. You normally see your BPA's, Josh, Dan Lovett, Sab. They're normally in the fight, so you would expect around circuits like this that they would be too. Although if you're somebody like Dan, you've had a lot of bad luck in the past couple of weeks, ever since really that title decider didn't go the way you wanted to then have a track like Saudi Arabia where bad luck is so much easier to get, I think you'd be looking at a track like this and it's not one you'd want.
Exactly that. It is very difficult, like I've been saying, to hook a lap up. But if you can, it is one of the best feelings. I think Saudi Arabia, it is one of those Grand Prix that you you do look forward to racing at this track. As difficult as it is and as mentally and physically demanding as this circuit is, it's one of the ones that if you want to do well at a track, it's here because it is such a satisfying Grand Prix to win, especially if you can sort of get into that flow state and really commit to the corners and have confidence in the car. And that is a big thing about this circuit. It is a lot about having confidence and trust that the car can withstand what you're giving it. And, we talk a lot about going over the limit, staying on the limit. This is a track where you need to be so, so close to that limit, but any little mistake is immediately punished by the walls.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some laps around here in real life. Obviously, everyone goes to that 2021 lap that could have been from Max Verstappen. When you have a lap like that where you're so on the limit, you're just throwing it about and it's going everywhere you want. It's one of those where you can feel when you're driving that lap that you're either going to set an incredible time or you're going to crash. And obviously, that is what happened that day. But there have been times where it's happened the other way. So I think lots of drivers will be looking at that lap and going, can I go one better? And Josh on his outlap there running a little bit wide. I believe he was letting an Alpine through, but that'll be what they're modeling their lap on is try and just throw the car. It's very easy to run wide or just slightly touch a curb that puts you into a wall. So it's a very, very difficult lap. You have to be focused. But if you can remain fully focused for the lap, then you're normally in with a chance of a very strong one.
You bring up that Verstappen lap, and you know, I do sometimes drop some random facts in the commentary booth, and I got one here for you tonight. So obviously, a lot of people speak about the fact that that was the lap that could have been, and I believe it was something like he was on for a 1 minute 26.4 or something like that throughout the whole lap, apart from that final corner where he crashed. He was on for a 26.4. In 2023, I believe it was, or it might have been 2024 when he took pole position, he completed that lap with a 126.4 to take pole. So, 2 or 3 years after the lap that could have been, he completed it, which I think is quite a little fairy tale ending to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, 1 year he could have had
Um,
that lap time and crashed out, and then a few years on, got the lap time he was destined to be on. It's quite cool.
Yeah, but then you could also say if obviously 2023 they had such a dominant car as compared to 2021, where going into those last two weekends, it was so close, and especially during that weekend, there was a lot that happened to where he would have been on for pole and ended up third. So it very much seemed like a bad situation at the time. And in hindsight, yeah, it didn't mean anything in the end.
Well, to counter your point, in 2023, the general consensus was the cars were slower than the 2021 cars. So, setting the lap time that he was on for in a 2021 car, I'd say that's pretty impressive. Although, I guess I am a little biased because I am a Max Verstappen fan.
Yeah, and to be fair, you could look at it the other way. I'm not a ginormous fan of his, especially some of his actions around Saudi Arabia. So,
Well, push
but
came
it
to
is a very
shove,
fair
shall
point.
we say. Push came to shove.
Yeah, hopefully we can have a bit of that tonight, but not as much bickering between the top two teams, if that would be possible, because we would prefer it if our stewards didn't have that much of a mess to clear up.
Most
Because I
certainly.
think if I had been in the steward's position that night, I don't think we'd have a sport left.
No, I think if I was a steward, I probably would have been blacklisted from all future racing events, let alone Formula One Grand Prix, that's for sure.
I very much agree. There'd be a restraining order on all racing circuits to my name, and I do quite like this, so
Yeah, I
I'm
do quite
quite
enjoy
glad
the
to just
racing.
sit behind my television screen and shout from a place where I'm safe.
Completely agreed. Bo has just been on his lap. He went about 2.5 tenths quicker. But interestingly, nowhere near BP Ace, who did come back out and improve, set a 28.6. And that is a hell of a lap, Lewis.
Very much so. That's very, very impressive. Obviously, we talk about laps in real life as Bo does get a little bit caught up on the curb there. Very easy to do. We talk a lot about in this session the laps in real life. Obviously, in the game, the cars are a couple of seconds slower. So around the 26s is what you would expect. But still, a 5/10 gap at the top for BP8. That is very, very large, especially in this league. So that's a very, very strong lap. We'd be happy with that. And I would expect that that could be already the lap that takes pole.
Most certainly. I mean, like I said, we saw Bo go quicker, and it still wasn't anywhere near challenging BP Ace. So it's going to be difficult to see anyone displacing him. Um, but obviously, we've still got time left in this session for one more lap for each driver, I do believe. Matt Connor is on a reconnaissance lap, as is Bo, so I don't believe anyone's on a fast lap at the minute. Paul Codd's invalidated. Meldrum's on a lap, so we'll ride on board with the Red Bull driver, who have had many, many successes in qualifying around this circuit since it was introduced in 2021. 11 milliseconds up is Meldrum through the first sector. I would not see him improve a position, but plenty of lap to go for the Red Bull man to try and find some more time in it. And I was explaining before you joined, Lewis, so many of these corners, I was going through a lap with Josh, and it was like at every corner I was saying, very difficult braking zone here, very difficult braking zone here, because this track is just so difficult to master.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky because it's a lot of high speed corners and not high speed in the sense of a Silverstone or an Austria where there is still high speed corners. But because it's a street circuit, that just gets amplified so much more to where mistakes you can't make them. In places like Austria and Silverstone, yeah, there's gravel and we say you will get punished, but you won't be out of the race. If you make a mistake here, 7 times out of 10, you will be out of the race or you will have a lot of damage that completely ruins your ability to compete at the top.
Exactly that. It is often compared to Monaco, but fast, the Jeddah Corniche circuit, and I mean you can see why. As Everyone now just on outlaps or in the pits for now. But I mean, it is such a high-speed circuit. But nearly at every corner, the walls are right next to you. So it is, I would actually say, more dangerous than Monaco because the walls are as close as Monaco, but it's about 3 times the speed of the Monegasque circuit. So it's very, very difficult. And, you know, like I was saying earlier about staying close to the limit and whatnot, you take 1 foot, maybe even one toe over that limit, and you've got no front wing, or you're out the session. And damage around here is not something that you want to carry. You know, it's circuits like, you know, your Austrias or your Monzas. You probably could get away with, you know, missing a front end plate or something like that. But round here, any sort of damage to your car, you are going to need to come into the pits because you will lose so much race time, and you might as well take the deficit of coming into the pits because it's your only chance of getting back into the race. And it's quite a wide circuit, Jeddah, but the corners do tighten very quickly. So for wheel-to-wheel combat, it can be very difficult. And I'm sure we will see towards the front, mid-pack and lower pack tonight, drivers trying to go wheel-to-wheel. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few collisions, safety cars, whatnot, because it is very difficult to race around this circuit, especially with the caliber of drivers that we have on this grid that are so close to each other. There's definitely got to be a lot of wheel-to-wheel action, and at a track like this, chaos is inevitable.
Yeah, it opens up and tightens up very, very quickly and very, very frequently. So it isn't possible to go wheel to wheel through a lot of these corners. And if you do, then you're heading straight to the scene of the accident. So it's not even worth trying.
Exactly that. About 40 seconds left to qualifying now then. We've got BP Ace and Bo who are on outlaps. Noah is currently on his lap. He's the third placed man. It's crazy to see these two guys at the top because they are so far clear. I mean, Noah's 23 milliseconds up, and normally in an NRRL, that'd gain you about 5 positions. But for Noah, that won't see him anywhere near the top two, as the Aston Martin now coming towards the final corner is going to get a little bit of a slipstream from the Williams in front of him, who runs very wide and actually comes back onto the track right in front of Noah. So Noah might have been a little bit held up there through the Williams. He comes to the line now, does improve his time. Race Chase goes clear of him though and up into third. We now join Bo on his lap, who doesn't seem to be pushing, really.
No,
No,
I
he's
think
4
he's backed
seconds
out.
down.
Zen is a tenth
Meanwhile,
and a half
BP
up.
Ace, a 10th and a half up. We thought that lap would already be good enough for pole position, and somehow he's finding even more time on this street circuit. It is absolutely impeccable to watch as BP Ace absolutely flying. We know that this track can provide brilliant stuff in qualifying, and if you hook it up, it can be one of the best feelings in F1 League racing. And BP Ace, also known as Zen, is giving it everything, but he's now a 10th and a half down. So through the middle sector, he's lost time and he has backed out of that lap. Race Chase, I don't believe, is on a lap. He's not, nor is Noah. Down then to 10th, everyone's done, as is Mr. Jabe. Wiz Jokies has backed off of his lap. Paul Codd is still on a lap, and he's the only man left. But I don't believe he'll be challenging for pole position. So Zen, or BP Ace, very, very clear. That's a 5/10 gap he's got out in front. Pole position for Ferrari, and what a lap it was. He didn't even need the final lap.
I did say I think that could be the one that would get it, and well, I'm not shocked whatsoever. The biggest surprise to me is the gap, though. That is, we both know BP Ace personally, but I would very much hope that that isn't the gap that we will see in the race, because we would at least like it to be challenged.
Most
So
certainly, but I mean, for Ferrari and for BP Ace, what a lap that was in qualifying. A 26.8 absolutely rapid from the Ferrari. He takes pole position from Beau in second and Race Chase with a late charge to third. Only a few milliseconds between himself and Noah in fourth. It's then Matt Connor in fifth, Dan Lovett in sixth, Josh seventh with Meldrum eighth, Sab Gaming ninth, Kevin Baker in 10th, Mr. Jabe 11th with Jokies 12th, Paul Cod 13th, Rendog 14th with I Have No Grip and Tez failing to set laps. But for Ferrari, what a dream. BP Ace in your car, and we know how quick he's been. Took second in Silverstone last week, and he is starting off this week in Jeddah with an absolute dream. 26.8 for BP Ace. He takes pole as we now standings, and it's currently his Ferrari teammate Rendog who leads the championship from Wiz Jokies in second, Aspect third, and BP Ace currently 7th in the championship. Will be looking to improve, and the best place to improve is from pole position. What a lap. Ferrari currently on top of the constructors standings, and with Zen on pole position, they will look to strengthen that lead. Haas are then in second. Wiz Jokies is currently in 12th for them, second place in the Drivers' Championship. Red Bull are in third, with Sauber fourth and McLaren fifth. Aston Martin sixth, Alpine seventh, Williams eighth. Mercedes are in ninth, with Racing Bulls in 10th. As we look to the calendar, today is round 3 here in Jeddah. Next week, we go to Las Vegas in the United States of America, followed by Qatar. Then we go to Singapore. Round 7 is at the Hungaro Ring in Hungary, followed by the season ending in Yas Marina, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A lovely little calendar that is for the Super League. And what's happened, Lewis? What have you spotted?
I've just been disconnected from the session once again.
Well, let's get you back
That is not ideal.
No. Well, you should be able to get in before the start. We normally have a 5-minute break, as always. And we'll quickly take a look in the chat. BP Ace is saying that is not a good lap, by the way, after taking pole by 0.5 of a second. That's scary. He said he was trying something new with the setup. We've got Ghostface saying Ace is too fast, he needs a grid penalty. And well, that might be one for
I have to disagree with that.
I don't believe that that's going to happen.
I respect it's not an ideal situation when a driver is that far in front, but I don't believe that's the solution.
I can't believe that he says that isn't a good lap time. He says his personal best is a 0.3. So he could have improved by another 0.5. That would have seen him be on pole by a second. Outrageous stuff from the Ferrari driver as he looks to take a maiden victory in NRRL tonight. He's got Beau right behind him on the grid. Ferrari versus McLaren. And I will pass this over to you, Lewis. If you're BP Ace after setting what was an electric lap in qualifying, you now find yourself on pole position, which is a very good place to start around a circuit like the Jeddah Corniche circuit. How are you planning to take these opening few laps?
You just got to focus on getting a clean start, getting out in front. Being in the lead, obviously you won't have that dirty air that a lot of the other drivers will, so you've got to take advantage of that.
Exactly that. 5 red lights ahead of the drivers, and they weren't held for long. It is lights out, and away we go. And BP Ace does get away well, immediately cuts over to the inside to cut off Beau, but Beau is happy to go around the outside. It turns to the inside very quickly, and now it's the drag race. BP Ace wins out, though. He is in the lead and leading clear. It is Matt Connor who's up to 3rd position, Noah up to 4th. It's been a torrid start for Race Chase, who's already down to 16th. He started in 3rd, so I'm not sure what happened to the Sauber driver. There is a yellow flag, and he's got massive damage and is round at turn 1. So Matt Connor improving a lot. Noah's up to 4th. Dan Lovett already up to 5th position. Good start from the McLaren driver as we see all the drivers taking very different lines through the hairpin. And we've got a car going off there, and that's Rendog, our current championship leader, into the wall. And while his Ferrari teammate leads, Rendog with massive damage. But out in front, by nearly a second already, BP Ace flying clear.
It's important he breaks that DRS duck so he's not under any pressure whatsoever. But that will be exactly the start he would have wanted. Bo just holding position. That's a strong place. Needs to make sure he doesn't lose out in the DRS and then just sit behind for a few laps. Try not to get in the way too much. I believe we have a virtual safety car.
We do, and that's because Rendog is out of the session. So the current championship leader out on lap 1, and the virtual safety car is deployed. And that will be good news for BP Ace, as he can now try and recharge some of that battery that he exerted trying to get away from Bo. But for the championship leader, a horrible start to this race, and he is out on lap 1 while his Ferrari teammate leads. Ferrari heads will be in their hands. One driver leads, one driver out. It is Bo in second, Matt Connor up 2 positions as we get back to green flag racing, and it's a good restart from Bo, already gaining about 1/10 of a second. Our big gainer on lap 1 was Paul Codd, up 6 positions there, and we've got Josh Meldrum and Race Chase into the pits.
Not quite sure why it's saying IDNF, but clearly that's not a great start to the race from me there. So I'll keep my position in the commentary box. That's me one and done for racing. My racing days are behind me now, so I'm not quite sure what happened there.
No, but it seems like BP Ace managed to get out of that DRS duct for one straight. Bo is now back in that DRS, and they are pulling well clear of Matt Connor, who is under massive pressure from Noah. The DRS is enabled for the Aston Martin driver. As we see the possible race strategies, it can be medium to hard or medium hard. Well, as we look to the tyres, a couple of drivers on the hard tyres already, most guys running the mediums. The question is, will it be a 1-stop or will it be a 2-stop? As we now move on to lap 3 of this race, and Bo is beginning to reel in BP Ace as they are now 2 seconds clear of Matt Connor, who's managing to defend that threat from Noah quite well. They've then got a gap behind to Dan Lovett and Sab Gaming, who are having their own little battle. It's then Paul Codd and Mr. Jabe, and then down towards sort of 9th, 10th place. It's a lot of gaps there. 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, 1.8, 7 seconds. And then we have the 3 guys at the back that pitted. Out in front, they're battling away. We've then got a battle for 3rd and 4th, then for 5th and 6th, then for 7th and 8th, as we see Mr. Jabe right on the back of Paul Codd as we go through the hairpin now. Very hard to follow in the dirty air, especially around such a high-speed circuit. And Noah is really beginning to put the pressure on Matt Connor here as we come down this very long straight. DRS, the big letterbox rear wing, will open now, and the Aston Martin will begin to gain on the V-car. Backs out of it there, lives to fight another day. Now will be his opportunity as he gets the DRS opened once again. He isn't using ERS though. He's happy to sit behind the V-carb for now. As we head towards the final corner, Mr. Jade manages to get past Paul Codd as Meldrum picks up a 3-second time penalty, and that will be crucial for tonight as it is very difficult to stay within the track limits around this circuit. Sab Gaming is really coming at Dan Lovett here. He's using the ERS, he's using the DRS. To the inside he goes towards turn 1, and the move is done before the corner even comes up. Sab Gaming for the Works Mercedes team moves up to 5th.
Old championship rivals renewing that rivalry there. That's a good move. I believe I've got a couple of onboard glitches, so I'm going to have to try and refrain from going on board. But that's a very, very good move from what I could see. And he will now be trying to chase down the Aston Martin in 4th.
Exactly that. Gap about 2 seconds to Noah. But if anyone is going to be able to bring that gap down, it will be Sab. He is the one and only championship winner in NRRL so far. He won Sunday Division 1 season, and he will be looking to write his name in even more history as he tries to charge 4th in the Super League. Out in front though, BP Ace has pulled a 1.6 second gap to Bo, and has more battery. So whether that was a mistake from Bo or whether BP Ace has just stood on the loud pedal, I can't say I'm exactly sure, but here we see Noah in the Aston Martin very, very close to the back of Matt Connor. As we go towards the final corner, Matt is using his ERS. Noah is going to look to the inside of the final corner. That's a late move from the Aston Martin driver, but he manages to get his way through and up into third. Matt Connor will have the DRS to try and fight back though. He's depleting the energy store as well. And as we go down the final straight, they are wheel to wheel. Matt Connor gets the move back up into third, but that's a good little battle as Wiz Jokies manages to get his way past Paul Codd. That is for 8th position. But good battles going on here between really the entire top 10 and even lower. Brilliant stuff as we're on lap 5 of 25 of this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And that gap between BP Ace and Bo is ever growing, now up to 2.5 seconds. Last time we checked about half a lap ago, it was only 1.4 seconds. So BP Ace flying out in front.
And Dan under big pressure again already from the Sauber of Mr. Jabe. Something clearly not working the way Dan would want. I Have No Grip gets himself up into 9th. A little bit low down for where we'd expect him over the past week or so. But he is making his way through the field. He has got Wiz Jokies up next. Little bit far back at this current point. But Dan clearly not having an ideal race.
Not thus far. He has fallen right off the back off of Sab Gaming. And Mr. Jade is now looking to try and compound those issues as he's in the DRS of Dan Lovett and is gaining. As we now go through the final corner, you can just see the dirty air affecting the Sauber understeer all the way through that final corner. Mr. Jabe a little bit too far back, and he knows it as he now comes down the main straight to begin lap 6. And look out in front. That gap is just ever increasing. BP Ace, where is this pace coming from?
We know both personally know he is a quick driver, but even I am stunned at the just pure speed he's showing so far. He is desperate for that race win. Dan picks up a penalty to just compound those issues. 6th place, losing time to those in front, being caught by those behind, and now a penalty as well for good measure. Not an ideal night for him, but he will carry on, as we know he will.
Exactly that, and that's the thing, you know, this race can change so quickly, you know, safety cars, virtual safety cars, damage. Jeddah is such a volatile circuit and absolutely anything can happen in a Formula 1 Grand Prix as Noah is gaining on Matt Connor once more as we go through the chicane now and towards the final DRS straight as we charge towards the final corner. The Aston Martin gaining. Doesn't look like he's gaining enough though towards that final corner. And he will have to sit behind the V-carb for another corner as Mr. Jade is now coming at Dan Lovett to the inside of the final corner. Dan will try and hang it around the outside. Mr. Jade on the inside. There is a little bit of a wiggle from the Sauber who will have the DRS and is using the ERS as well. Dan Lovett with a bit more energy in his battery store will be able to gain away. But Mr. Jade is just going to tuck back into that slipstream for now and will sit behind for the time being. But that fight is now getting a little bit fiery.
Noah up into 3rd. Him and Matt were wheel to wheel through 1 and 2 whilst you were watching Jabe and Dan. And Noah has gained a little bit away. Matt runs a little bit wide. And still up front, as you say, that gap increasing as ever, now 4.5 seconds. And you would very much expect at this current point, he is well on his way for a deserved victory, although he hits the wall.
Who's hit the wall? Sorry?
A BP Ace. I don't believe there's damage, but I heard he hit the wall. Doesn't look like it. But that could just be a slight mental gauge now of you've hit the wall. Try not to hit it again, because only a couple of times will you be able to hit a wall and not have damage around here. He is still pulling away, so it doesn't look like any damage. But potentially the first sign that everything isn't as rosy as we think.
Exactly that. Mr. Jabe is coming back at Dan Lovett towards the final corner. Is there a move on the inside? There isn't, but he is going to keep behind, and he will have that DRS, and Dan with a big snap there, and there was contact between them. The McLaren driver managing to keep it out of the wall, and he is gaining away with that battery. He is using it well, but Mr. Jabe is gaining again towards turn 1, and is going to go for it down the inside as they go wheel to wheel. Jabe just has to back out of that one. But like you say, Lewis, with BPA's hitting the wall, he will now just need to try and calm it down a bit. But I mean, look at the gap he's got. 5.6 seconds out in the lead as we've got a yellow flag now, and that's for a Sauber. And that's Mr. Jabe, who's obviously had an incident somewhere. I have no grip, manages to get past him. No damage to the Sauber car, it doesn't look like. But he's had an incident somewhere, and he's even gone off again, and through goes Wiz Jokies.
Not what Jabe would have wanted. He was doing well, making his way up the field. And that is just a reminder of how tricky this circuit can be. Do not get too ahead of yourself. You have to remain focused. And that one moment of potential disfocus, you could say, has cost him.
Exactly that, and BP Ace will just try and eke out that gap even further. Matt Connor still right behind the rear wing of Noah, and he is looking to gain on the on the Aston Martin. He's in the V-Carb, is Matt Connor. Nothing doing into turn 1 though. Lap 9 of 25 of this race. And Lewis, if you're BP Ace here, you know you've now got a buffer towards Bo. Are you looking for the overcut of C when he pits and then come in a lap later, or are you going to look to undercut yourself? And realistically, coming to you, are you looking for a 1-stop or a 2-stop in this race?
To be brutally honest, if I'm in his position right now, you're building that gap. I'm not really thinking about what he's doing because you know you have the pace that you can largely do whatever the strategy is already suggested. So I think he's going well, doing what he needs to do, and I think he's going to be well out of range to be strategically outsmarted. So I think he's free to do whatever he wants.
Exactly, and that is the thing when you are so quick and you have such a massive gap out in front, is that you can just make your own race. You know, obviously there could still be things like safety cars and virtual safety cars that could neutralize the race and bring that gap down again. But the fact that he's, 6.97 seconds in the lead, he is just free to do absolutely whatever he wants. As the race now just comes to a bit of a stalemate here, we've got Matt Connor and Noah still battling away as they have been since the very start of this Grand Prix. All the gaps in the midfield and the lower pack just starting to eke themselves out as we see Bo and Noah come into the pits then. So BP Ace and Matt Connor stay out, as does Sab Gaming. Dan Lovett also manages to stay out, and he will continue once more. But like we were saying, Lewis, Bo didn't have that buffer. BPA has that buffer, and now he really can just do what he wants. If he wants to react to it, he can. If he doesn't want to react to it, he doesn't have to. He's got that sort of two-lap advantage where he can just make his own race and do whatever the hell he wants.
Exactly, and that's the position you only really earn if you're that far out in the lead. So you can't say luck, you can't say anything else other than just he has been far better than everyone else today. So the strategy will do whatever he wants to do, and he's more than earned the right to do that.
Exactly, and I mean, in pursuit of his first win in NRRL, and what a win this would be. What a dominant victory this would be as we see Bo now looking around the outside at a very unconventional place to overtake. But on the fresher tyres, I have no grip. Absolutely no answer to that. And Bo up into 5th place. Noah is now right on the back of I have no grip and will look to make that move as quickly as possible as he's on the fresher tyres as well. Bo has about 2.6 seconds to gain to his teammate. Although you would imagine the likes of Matt Connor, Sab, maybe Dan Lovett will come in this lap. BP Ace stays out, moves on to lap 11, still on those mediums. Matt Connor does come into the pits. Sab Gaming also coming into the pits. We now look to Dan Lovett to see if he will be boxing. A massive slide there for Dan out the final corner, and a big moment into the wall there for Bo. Somehow, no damage to the front wing of that McLaren, but that was a very heavy hit into the wall as he looks to try and gain some time on BP Ace with the undercut. He knows that that gap will come down with the undercut, but BP Ace was so far ahead and will be able to just try and eke out that gap again on the fresher tyres once he does come into the pits. Noah's 1.8 seconds behind the McLaren. It's then a 2.3 second gap to Matt Connor. Mr. J is still out on the medium compound tyres, as is Kevin Baker, who started on the hards. I believe one of the only drivers to start on the hard compound tyres, so he will stay out for a while longer. He's got Sab Gaming right behind him, and Sab will look to get this move done as quickly as possible, as he doesn't want to be held up at all by the Alpine driver. Billy will have to stick behind for at least one more corner, as towards the banked hairpin we go then. Is there a move around the outside for him? There isn't, but he is now going to look for it on the inside and does manage to get past the Alpine and through into 6th.
It's a good move from him there. He gets himself up higher, and he will be now looking towards that top 5 as BP Ace comes into the pits. Here we go then.
Little bit of mistake there from BP Ace into the pits. It almost glitched him back into the pit lane. That was very weird watching that on board, but it'll be interesting to see where Bo comes out, as he's now coming down the main straight. BP Ace is now coming down the pit lane. He will be able to turn off the pit limiter now. This is going to be very close between the two leaders as BP Ace now gets his foot down. Bo coming through turn 1. That gap that was about 9 seconds, now under a second. So Bo, with the warmer tyres as well, will be able to try and gain. And you've got to think for Bo, who was losing so much time, this has got to be his only opportunity to see BP Ace and stick with him. As the gap now 0.8 of a second, he's got to try and stay in that DRS and make something work here, because we know that BP Ace on 2-lap fresher tyres now as well will only begin to gain away. So for Bo, this is a critical moment of this Grand Prix.
Absolutely. He needs to stick with him as much as he can and just try and pull himself back into contention, because if he gets out of DRS once, you would expect that BP Ace will just cruise back up again.
Exactly that. He has got the DRS, has Bo, but he is very close, teetering on the edge of falling out of that gap. The DRS will bring him closer. He doesn't have much battery though, whereas BP Ace does. So this is going to be a very interesting strategical battle now, as you'd imagine BP Ace's hard tyres have warmed up, and we will begin to see the true pace once more of the Ferrari driver. Bo sets the fastest lap of the race. Noah's about 2.8 seconds off of that. He's gained on Matt Connor a lot with that strategy, as we see Dan Lovett now pulling past Wiz Jokies into the final corner. Wiz on the medium tyres, Dan on the hard compound tyres. Wiz Jokies will look to try and fight back this one. He's got the DRS, he's got the ERS, and he is going to the inside of turn 1, is the Haas driver. Before the corner even comes up, the move is done, but Dan will try and hold it around the outside, manages to get the position back. Good driving from the pair of them. Dan's up to 7th.
That's good for him. Hopefully this race can start to come alive a little bit for him. On those hard tyres, you would expect that he could take them to the end of the race, but he is 6.7 seconds off of P6 with that penalty, of course. So if a safety car gets called, he's in decent position to potentially capitalise. You would hope so, because he hasn't had a great few weeks, not by his own doing whatsoever.
Look at the gap now between Bo and BP Ace. 2 seconds in a single lap he's pulled out, really. And that is absolutely astonishing. Is what a camera angle we've got here from the helicopter. And you can see the Ferrari is absolutely on rails, and there is nothing that Bo can do about it. He's trying his best, I assure you. But a 1:30.8 fastest lap from BP Ace, he is absolutely in the groove, and in the pursuit of a first win in NRRL, it would take a miracle to stop him here tonight.
Very much so. When he's in this kind of form, you and I have both seen it. It's very, very difficult to stop him. And he looks in that zone of he knows that this is his and no one's going to take it from him. As Dan, we've speaking a little bit about him, has got himself up to sixth. That's because Kevin has pitted. So a nicely run race at the minute. 12 seconds off of the top five. So this could be a lonely end for him. But I'm sure he'll be happy to have a race where he's finished relatively high, given that, I don't want to say loss of form, but not as he's been in the wars a little bit, hasn't he, in the past few weeks?
Most certainly. He's not had the best luck, has Dan Lovett, and while he did win on Friday, he's not had the best of luck at all. He has struggled a fair amount with contact and bad luck and pit stop errors and whatnot. So it's good to see that Dan Lovett's getting back in the groove and he is gaining away from I Have No Grip. And while it may be a lonely race, like you mentioned, Lewis, I'm sure he will just be happy to try and get back into a groove of some nice, a good run of form with no bad luck, no errors, and he will just look to try and solidify himself back in a championship fight.
Yeah, but you can't get too, if you're Dan at this point, you can't get too comfortable with where you're at because the driver behind you, at this current point, you would say is not probably one of the five drivers at the moment you wouldn't want behind you due to the form he is in at the minute. A little bit of a quiet race from I Have No Grip tonight compared to what we've been used to for the last week. But Dan is looking good at the minute, just pulling that gap a tiny bit away, largely doing the same pace. But that could be something to keep an eye on.
Race Chase and Paul Codd were having a massive battle there, and Paul Codd absolutely throwing it up the inside of the final corner. Nothing doing for him though, and again, absolutely throwing it into turn one. So late on the brakes was the Williams. He has got damage though, and that will be weighing him down, and you can see the gap growing between himself and Race Chase, and the race now just starts to stagnate a bit again as the gaps start to open up a little bit, and you can see Paul Codd really starting to struggle with that front wing damage, and way off the track he goes. And the gap out in front now 4 seconds, but the key for BP Ace is that he doesn't get overzealous. He just stays consistent, keeps knocking the laps down. 9 laps to go of this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and he is on course for what would be one of the most dominant victories that I have commentated over in NRRL. He took pole position by 5/10 and has not looked at all at threat from anyone this entire Grand Prix.
No, even that moment when he came out of the pits, he still had a fairly decent gap, and it took him about a lap to get back away. So, Bo has had some pace, but it has just been Bo has been driving at a 9 today, and BPS has just been driving at a 10. So that's a level. There's nothing really more Bo could have done. So I think he'll be satisfied with a second place. But if you're BPS, if it's anything other than the top step of the podium, it's a complete failure.
Most certainly. He is absolutely flying. Closest battle we've got on track at the minute is between Josh and Kevin Baker. Around 1.5 seconds, the gap between the pair of them. As like I say, we just see the gap start to open up now, and the race gets a little bit boring, but for all the drivers, the strategies are very split. There's still a long time to go in this race. And now I am going to pose the question to you, Lewis. If you're Bo, you can see this gap just ever more growing further and further away, and you see BP Ace getting further away in the distance. This must be such a knock of confidence for Bo, who has been so consistent and so quick over previous weeks in the Super League. But to see a display like this from BP Ace, it must crush you.
Yes and no. I think at a track like this, a second place, I think anyone would bite your hand off for that. But given how, I think the moment where it might have potentially derailed him is where BP Ace was about a second in front and then just drove off after, that can be disheartening. But I don't think he'll be too dissatisfied with second.
I mean, it completely depends how you look at it. You know, I've got a quite aggressive racer's mind. You know, I'm of the opinion that second is the first of the losers, and that's not where you want to be. But you know, second is still good. It's a good haul of points. It's early in the season still, and while it is only an 8-race calendar, you know, this is only round 3, and second place is a very good handful of points for the McLaren driver. Same with Noah in third. You know, he was battling very hard with Matt Connor, pulled off the strategy correctly and managed to pull away. He will be happy, as he's actually coming into the pits, is the Aston Martin driver. So only 7 laps on those hards, and we've got a safety car deployed as Paul Codd is in the barriers. So that absolutely changes everything now, as with 7 laps to go of this Grand Prix, the safety car is deployed. Noah, with a very timely pit stop. Sab Gaming also comes into the pits. You'd imagine most people will pit for either the soft or medium compound tyres, but this throws everything back into the air, as now between BP Ace and Bo, they will have the exact same strategy, you would imagine, because they will both box. They'll have the exact same ERS. The gap will be shrunk, and BP Ace will have his head in his hands as he realises these 18 laps of work now comes crumbling down.
But we've seen how quick he is, so there's no argument that you could make, in my opinion, to say that he won't do the exact same thing again. I think if you're in his position, it's frustrating, but I think you're fairly settled still. If you've had that pace all night, I think you know exactly what you've been doing all night. You just got to do that again.
That is a very good point, and like you mentioned earlier, we saw him just take off out of nowhere into the distance and leave Bo completely in the dust. But the key will be, how many laps do we have left to go racing? And Bo, you will imagine, will see this as his only real opportunity to win the Grand Prix, and will give it absolutely everything to try and get on the back of the Ferrari and ahead of the Ferrari. So it'll be an interesting end to this race as we now look, and BP Ace does come into the pit lane. Bo, you would imagine, will do the same thing, and does. Now, what tyres do they go on to? The Ferrari crew comes rushing out medium compound tyres for the Ferrari. Now the McLaren crew comes rushing out, and it's soft compound tyres for the McLaren. So could that be paying dividends as BP Ace, the leader who has led every single lap of this Grand Prix, now will come in for medium tyres? Bo comes in for softs. But key to this race as well, Noah has undercut him and will be in between them.
I think that's a mistake from Bo. I don't think those tyres will last as long as he's going to want them to be in position to overtake 2 drivers. I think BP Ace has got this. I'd be stunned if he doesn't win this race.
I mean, I would imagine the soft tyres can go this long. You'd imagine the safety car will be out for another lap or 2. That only leaves us with 4 or 5 laps of racing. And you would have to imagine the soft compound tyres can quite easily do that.
Yeah, but overtaking 2 drivers on the caliber of these 2 around a circuit like this, I can't say I could see that happening.
So in Bo's position, would you have maybe taken the gamble to stay out and keep the track position then?
Yeah, I probably would have done Q Martin Brundle here, but I probably would have done whatever Zen didn't do. Because track position at a track like this is critical, and you would have known that the Noah thing of whether he would pit or not was going to be a threat. So I think I would have taken the risk and stayed out.
It is an interesting call, and I mean, only time will tell if that strategy call was the correct thing to do or not. As BP Ace leads from Noah, it is Bo in third, and Matt Connor in 4th. Sab Gaming 5th. Dan Lovett in 6th position with I Have No Grip in 7th. Mr. Jabe in 8th. Josh 9th. Kevin Baker in 10th with Jokies 11th. Race Chase in 12th. Meldrum 13th. And Tez in 14th. None of the top 3 have penalties. So could that be a factor as well? Maybe they've got warnings or something like that that could play into it. You just don't know how this race is going to go. As you would imagine on this lap, everyone will catch back up and the safety car will be in. Maybe it'll be out for another lap if they can't catch up. But it's going to be incredibly interesting to see how this race shapes up. You just cannot call it.
No, it's a very interesting dynamic between these top 3, as you would say, yeah, tyres are the advantage for Bo, track position for Ace, but then you can't count out Noah either, as he's done well to wedge himself in there. But it is very, very interesting to see how this will end.
Completely that. It is going to be interesting to see how all of these drivers cope and how this race progresses. Lap 20 of 25 and all the drivers have caught up. So the safety car, you would imagine, will be in this lap, and BP Ace will lead us away for 4 laps of racing action. And this is going to be a thrilling end to this Grand Prix.
You would expect, as we say, it's in this lap.
I mean, all the drivers have caught up, so I don't see why the safety car wouldn't be in this lap. So we see BP Ace just weaving in. Yes, the safety car is in this lap then. So BP Ace will take over and slow everyone down. It is him who currently leads from Noah and Bo. And that is the big battle. The top 3, who will come out on top as the safety car comes round the final corner now and dives straight for the pit lane. And BP Ace, when does he go? It's not a very long straight down at the main straight, and BP Ace just weaving around to try and get some last minute temperature, and he has gone. And Noah has stuck with him relatively well. Bo is under a lot of pressure from Matt Connor here on the hard compound tyres. And to the outside looks the V-carb. Nothing doing for him. Not able to get late enough on the brakes. But BP Ace with a good safety car restart. Noah stuck with him, but not too close. And Zen had that under control. The Aston Martin follows him through. Bo goes very, very wide there. And Matt Connor is going to gain a lot of impotence as he sees the McLaren struggling. Although Matt Connor goes very wide onto the curb of death. Has to rejoin. There's the Mercedes of Sab going wide. Dan Lovett also manages to get past Matt Connor and up into 5th. But Bo now is falling right off the back and is already a second behind Noah, who's nearly a second behind BP Ace. So what was so close for about half a lap now opens up once more.
It was very risky. And I said I had my reservations, and that was exactly why. Just on the off chance you don't have a great restart and you're under pressure from any one of these drivers, that can backfire massively.
Exactly that. And Bo, you would imagine those tyres will begin to warm themselves up, and they have. He's now just under a second behind Noah. And he will look to gain on the Aston Martin driver. Lap 22 of 25 here. And BP Ace sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. But he is sitting pretty out in front and just has a few more laps to go before he wins his first race in NRRL.
And one that he's very much earned. It would have been very, very unfortunate if he had dominated this whole race and a safety car at the end had ruined it, because he has been just head and shoulders above everyone else today.
Exactly that. He's dominated And this would be as well a Grand Slam, which I don't believe we have ever seen in NRRL. A Grand Slam meaning you take pole position, you get the fastest lap of the race, you lead every lap, and you win the Grand Prix. And BP Ace is on course to do that tonight. We have never seen it in NRRL before, and we've been talking about how dominant this victory will have been. That just shows you how dominant this will have been. As we've got Tez, who's really fallen off the back of the pack. Wiz Jokies and Meldrum have also fallen back. Bo is gaining on Noah with the DRS, but he doesn't look close enough to try and make a move on the Aston Martin.
He is within that DRS range, but just nothing seemingly working at the minute. And it's very frustrating in these dying laps. You see that counter just go down, and there's nothing you can do when you're already pushing. And especially through here is very difficult, easy to get dirty air, and it makes it feel 10 times longer.
Exactly that. It almost lets the desperation creep in as you realise, you were on place for second place, and now on the soft compound tyres you are beginning to struggle, and there is nothing that you can do about it. You made your choice, you took the gamble, and now there's nothing you can do as Matt Connor manages to get past Dan Lovett and up into 5th position. But for Bo, this will be incredibly frustrating, as we were talking about the fact, second place is the first of the losers, but he will still be happy with it. I'm sure he will be heading back to the paddock a defeated man. As third place, again, still a good heap of points. It's a podium position, but it's not what he will have come here for tonight. And especially after being in second for so long, finishing third will not make him happy.
No, but I think you also have to take a measure of responsibility in that if you had second pretty much in the bag and you took a risk for the win and you've ended up losing a position, which is understandable going for that victory, but you knew there was a risk, and unfortunately for him, the risk hasn't paid off.
Exactly that. Josh manages to get past I Have No Grip into turn 1. He's up to 7th position, but with penalties, those positions will change. 3 seconds for Matt Connor, Dan Lovett, I Have No Grip, and Wiz Jokies. 6 seconds for Josh, for Kevin Baker, and for Meldrum. But the drivers are coping very well under these conditions, and BP Ace is thriving in these conditions. Penultimate lap of this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and he is 2.1 seconds clear. Bo has now fallen out of the DRS of Noah and is actually falling back into the jaws of Sab Gaming, who is under pressure from Matt Connor and Dan Lovett. But this trio is beginning to gain on Bo. So could there be late drama towards this final lap, as that gap is ever tumbling, and this pack of drivers does also have DRS, which will only pull them closer to the McLaren driver. So could a bad day go even worse for the McLaren entity, as BP Ace now comes towards the final corner to begin the final lap of what will have been one of the greatest drives in NRRL history. Admittedly, he's made it a bit boring for us, but what a drive from the Ferrari, who is about to earn the first Grand Slam in NRRL history as he sets off and embarks on his final lap.
Yeah, you could say it's been boring, but I think you just have to appreciate the fact that we have seen an utterly faultless drive, and every single time there's been a little bit of pressure, he's just said, what pressure? And he's completely gone and dominated the race. Well deserved.
Completely agreed, Lewis. Well deserved. And what a drive it has been. And I don't want to keep bringing it up, but it's just been astonishing to see how he's grown the gaps and coped under the pressure when he's needed to. The safety car came out and he dealt with that well. We've got a spin at the back, and that's Kevin Baker. Manages to get going once more. A little bit of damage to that front wing, and he will want to forget this race very quickly. But interestingly, Matt Connor has got DRS on Bo. Now, Matt Connor does have a penalty, but Sab does not. So can Matt Connor try and get past the McLaren. And what can the Mercedes do in this fight on the final lap? We know Matt Connor, he's very close and he's surely bound to take the position. But for BP Ace, this is the most dominant drive we have ever seen in NRRL. He was looking for a maiden victory. Well, how's a maiden Grand Slam? BP Ace wins the Jeddah Grand Prix with the first ever Grand Slam in NRRL history and the most dominant victory we have ever seen. It is Noah who comes through to take second place. Bo manages to hold on to third after a horrible final stint on the soft compound tyres. Sab Gaming comes home for fourth position. It's Matt Connor who finishes fifth with Dan Lovett in sixth place. But for BP Ace, a dominant race. And what a win for Ferrari.
Mega. Just a fantastic performance. And like I say, a well-deserved victory.
Absolutely brilliant from the Ferrari driver. And for the first time in NRRL, he stands on the top step of the podium and takes home the plaudits. Well, there are your results then. BP Ace, with the first Grand Slam in NRRL history, wins the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, from Noah in second and Bo taking the final podium position. It is then Sab Gaming in fourth with Matt Connor in fifth, Dan Lovett in sixth, Race Chase seventh, I Have No Grip in eighth, Josh in ninth, Mr. Jabe 10th, Wiz Jokies 11th, Kevin Baker in 12th, Meldrum 13th, Tez 14th, and then we have Paul Codd, Rendog, and apparently my co-commentator Lewis DNFing the race. Well, thank you very much.
A great 1 second in the race for myself. Driver of the day.
Completely. If you ask me my driver of the day, it's got to go to Drift Hawk YT7. Brilliant drive from the back of the grid to stay at the back of the grid.
No one overtook me.
Exactly.
No one overtook me all race long.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you to everyone for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for the Thursday 50% division. My name has been JP. I've been your commentator. Alongside me has been Lewis. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.